Coming up on the 1 minute mark until airtime on the LSU Sports Radio Network. Stand by for your 1 minute mark. Coming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark, 1 minute till airtime on the LSU Sports Radio Network. Coming up, stations, your countdown until airtime will be your 30-second mark when the network will go silent. Stand by for your final 30-second mark until airtime. Coming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark, 30 seconds until airtime on the LSU Sports Radio Network.
It's game week for LSU Fighting Tiger football. This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. This Saturday is homecoming at LSU. The Gamecocks of South Carolina come rolling in from the Palmetto State.
Our biggest thing is the details. When we have the details down, our attention to detail, and we have focus on each play, we're pretty darn good. Problem is we can't keep it long enough. We get distracted. That's what we're working on this week.
Coming up, head coach Brian Kelly sets the tone for the Tigers this week and updates all things LSU football. But first, with a preview of this week's matchup from inside the Capital One studio at legendary Tiger Stadium, here are former Tiger Gordy Rush and the voice of your Fighting Tigers, Chris Blair.
Welcome in, everybody. We get back to football this week. LSU going to be back at home as they get ready to welcome in the South Carolina Gamecocks. Another SEC tilt coming up this Saturday evening. Tigers looking to get back to their winning ways, and Gordy Rush suffered last time out. Tough loss on the road to a very good Ole Miss team, 24-19, the final score. And, you know, I guess it's been said many times by many coaches, the bye week always comes at a good time, regardless of where it comes. But I think this being considered after 5 weeks of football probably did come at a very good time for LSU.
No, very much so. I think first and foremost, this team's been through 5 football games, and there were enough bruises and knocks and things of that nature that you want to rest and get healed up for a very important 3-game stretch right now coming through the SEC and having South Carolina at Vandy and Texas A&M. And then secondly, I think for the coaches, I don't think the fans out there realize just how fast football moves, right? You get into a rhythm. You get back from a game on Sunday. Monday, you're really watching the film with the players. You're giving them a chance to rest, and you have 3 days to really autocorrect. I think it's a chance to self-scout. And what does that mean? Let's take on the offensive side of the ball, where obviously there's been a lot of discussion. You get a chance, number one, to see what other teams have done to you. I don't think anybody expected the majority of these teams to have 3 or 4 people at the line of scrimmage and drop 7 or 8 in the coverage. The opposite of that happened a year ago. Everybody was bringing pressure packages. Now you get a chance to digest that and then look at some of the things you've done and that have worked, and some of the things you have not done well, and correct those things. So I think the self-scouting is huge, and I'm interested to see what changes on both sides of the football they come up with after reacting to what has happened the first 5 weeks.
Well, as you mentioned, again, it's a chance not only to self-scout and improve in every phase of the game, but also get healthy, which obviously the Tigers were without Caden Durham last time out, the starting running back. You certainly can't measure how much his loss meant to the team just in all of the things that he does, along with other guys who are just trying to get back to 100% like everybody else across the country. Again, LSU jumped out to an early lead. A pretty good fortune there on the tip drill, got up 7-0. But as you said, offensively, it was just kind of a rough go the entire game. It seemed like there would be a little bit of a momentum play And again, taking nothing away from Ole Miss. I think they're a very good team. But watching that game in real time and then going back, Gordy, and watching the film a couple of times after that, it almost seemed like there were some self-inflicted mistakes on the part of LSU that, again, not taking anything away from Ole Miss, but LSU didn't help their causes. And obviously I'm talking about some drop passes, some missed throws and opportunities where you had guys open that just didn't come to fruition. And we heard from Coach Kelly coming in on the billboard there. He basically said, hey, when this team is really locked in on the details, all of the little things that go into proper execution, they've been really good, and that's what they're trying to get back to.
Yeah, it was a disappointing loss because I thought going into it that LSU had the better roster, and I feel the same way coming out of it. Credit Ole Miss, they had a heck of a game plan, and they executed, and LSU did not. And you know, what the things that Coach Kelly talked about offensively in the first half, they kept the LSU defense on the field for 50 plays, and then when you add all the penalties and what I like to call time of day, it was 2 hours. Yeah. And it was warm, and you know the defense didn't look like themselves on the back half of the game. Some of it they were on the field too much on the field in the first half. Give credit to Ole Miss, and obviously take nothing away from Chambliss. He was fantastic at quarterback, and they played, and LSU did not. But look, the margin of victory as we're now seeing in the SEC in this new age of the revenue share. Nobody's great. I don't think anybody's 12-0, 13-0 dynasty. And then 3-9, your Vanderbilts and your Mississippi States are no longer your Vanderbilts and Mississippi State. And so the margin of error has become increasingly thin, and you've got to go out there and execute. And I think offensively, finding a way to, let's put it like this, better time of possession, holding on to the football, and like what Coach said, being able to play complementary football. You can't have your defense on the field that long for 80-some-odd plays in the SEC. Any good defense is going to wear down.
Yeah, I was thinking this weekend watching some of college football that, we use the word parity, and we've used it for a long time. The parity in the SEC or the parity at Power 4 football. But, I mean, it was truly on display just this past weekend as to who can beat who on any given Saturday.
Well, everybody, let's take everybody in the SEC now every school has $20.5 million revenue share. Now it's up to you how you want to share that amongst your student athletes. But the lion's shares go into football. So you've got schools like Vanderbilt, for instance, that we've seen over the last 2 years. They wouldn't got the starting quarterback from New Mexico State, the starting tight end from New Mexico State. They've got a DB from Tennessee. Not in our lifetime did we ever see Vanderbilt grabbing all those transfers. And so that's a very good football team, having a chance to watch them, hang with Alabama on the road for 4 quarters. And I went back and saw the South Carolina film. They were the more physical team in this game. This is not, not the Vanderbilt of 10 years ago.
Well, the good news is, and I know it's hard to find good news, and certainly nobody takes losing harder than obviously the players and the coaching staff, and they had to wait. Probably, as we said, for good reason to work on some things and get healthy, but they have to wait to put that bad taste away. But the good news is you are 4-1 on the season. Right. And there are some other teams that probably had big dreams going into 2025, and they've already got 2, sometimes 3 losses. So, again, everything's still in front of LSU. It's going to be important to see, and we'll hear from Coach Brian Kelly coming up at the top of the hour about the work that they put in. And again, I think it's going to be a lot about South Carolina this week, but obviously the last 10 days or so, or the last 10 days leading up to this week, is probably going to be all about LSU.
No, absolutely. It's 100% about LSU. I think we've seen enough of this team, and we know how good the talent is on this team. If LSU takes care of their business and executes on both sides of the ball, and of course in the special teams, LSU's got an excellent top 10 roster. They've got to play to that capability.
Well, again, the Tigers 1-1 in league play, 4-1 on the season. They'll be back in action this coming Saturday. It's homecoming 2025. A lot of things on hand here at the stadium coming up. We'll talk a little bit about that before we hand it off to Coach Brian Kelly. Up next, we're going to talk about those South Carolina Gamecocks. Last year, it was a thriller in Columbia. LSU able to outlast the Gamecocks 36-33. Find out what Gordy knows about this year's team under Coach Shane Beamer after this quick break. We'll be back right after this.
In Louisiana, we love our LSU Tigers. When the band strikes up those 4 iconic notes, the fans go wild. At Louisiana Blue, we're Tiger fans too. That's why we've teamed up with LSU Athletics to bring you the compassion of the cross and security of the shield, so you're free to wear your stripes and roar. Live Louisiana. We've got you. Louisiana Blue, Louisiana True.
Proud partner of LSU Athletics.
There was a time when a person's word was enough. A time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
I'm Richard Fontenot, president of the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. My brother and I grow rice, soybeans, and raise crawfish on our farm in Evangeline Parish. For a fourth-generation farmer like myself, Louisiana Farm Bureau is as much a part of my life as checking traps or harvesting rice. Our organization is more than 145,000 members strong, and we've been around for more than 100 years. The Louisiana Farm Bureau spans generations, and we want you to join our family.
Visit lafarmbureau.org, the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
Champions make plays on the field and in life. With LSU Online, you can keep your career moving, earn your degree, and still run your own game plan. Learn anytime from anywhere and take the next step toward your goal line. It's time to make your move, Tiger fans. Visit online.lsu.edu. LSU Online. Win where you are.
Coming up, Coach Kelly addresses the media on this week's preparation. This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Here again are Gordy and Chris.
Tigers back at Tiger Stadium. Coming up this Saturday, they get back into SEC play, stay in SEC play, as Gordy mentioned. Next several weeks, going to be awfully important to the overall season for your Tigers. They take on South Carolina. They're on the homecoming menu here in 2025. Kickoff for 6:55 inside Tiger Stadium. We'll get things started at 4:45 along network lines. And Gordy, as I mentioned earlier, the game last year in Columbia, again, I think a very underrated home field advantage there in Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium. It's not the biggest stadium by any means, but it is a reverberation machine when they get 80,000 in there, and it gets awfully loud. And LSU got down early, 17-0 before basically you could look up. Credit the Tigers. They battled back. I think that's when we all really got introduced to Caden Durham. He got the Tigers on the board on that electric run. LSU able to hold on to the win 36-33. I bring that up because South Carolina, I got a lot of friends who are Gamecock fans, having lived in the Palmetto State 10 years, about 15 years. And they all really felt like this year, with Sellers coming back after, having some great time at quarterback last year, did lose some key defensive players, but had some key defensive players coming back. Expectations were awfully high. They got off to a 2-0 start, scored good points. The defense got after, I think gave up maybe 10 or 11 points the first two games. Then ran into that buzzsaw, the more physical Vanderbilt team, as you pointed out. Had their chances against Missouri on the road in Como, but then got right against Kentucky. Kentucky, a program that is certainly struggling this year, but a big confidence booster for the Gamecocks is now they come here probably with revenge on their mind.
Well, no doubt, it was an epic football game, and a lot of South Carolina fans thought they should have won that game as LSU came from behind. A couple calls went the Tigers' way. I remember that, and a couple things were thrown on the field above my head when I was down in the end zone there at Williams-Brice Stadium. Look, South Carolina's roster is not what it was a year ago. They lost a lot of people to the NFL. Lenoris Sellers is obviously a fantastic quarterback. He's gotten some first-round grades as we continue to see him go through this season. Offensively, they have struggled. I mean, statistically, they are in the bottom one quarter of the SEC, bottom one quarter of the stats in NCAA football, and they have struggled. Now, one game in particular, you mentioned the Vanderbilt game. It was a 14-7 game when Sellers took a targeting head-to-head hit. Yeah. He was knocked out of the game and put into concussion protocol, and then things got out of hand in that football game. He came back to play against Missouri up there at night. It was a tough environment, and the offense could not keep up with what Missouri had. They had a couple big plays but they've given up a lot of sacks. They've given up a lot of penalties. They've been inconsistent on offense. Against Kentucky, it was the Gamecock defense that had 4 turnovers, and they had 2 turnovers, a fumble return, and an interception for a touchdown. So it wasn't a great offensive output. It was a good defensive game, and they beat Kentucky 35-13. So it gives you a little bit of the picture, I think, why Vegas has LSU as a 10.5-point favorite over the Gamecocks.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you're spot on with the offense. I mean, even in a win over Kentucky that looked lopsided, Sellers 11 of 14, 153 passing yards. He had 81 yards on the ground. I really think when I look at this matchup, I think this will be a defensive game. And I'm not saying that it'll be a low-scoring game, but what I mean by that is LSU can't apply the pressure. That's kind of been their MO. And he really struggled against Vanderbilt. I think he had negative 28 yards rushing with all the sacks and really tackles for loss that Vanderbilt was able to get on South Carolina. I think that bodes well for LSU and the style of defense. On the flip side of that, last year I think, as you mentioned, South Carolina had a much better front seven.
Yes.
Now, they've got 2 pretty good edge rushers that return this year. But I got a sense that they are going to be like everybody else since Louisiana Tech facing LSU, and they're like, we may not get the pressure we could have gotten last year, and we did get last year. So let's go ahead and stick 6 or 7. We'll rush 3 or 4, and let's just clog the passing lanes. I think, and then for that, whatever defense has the upper hand, I think the team's going to be in better shape.
Yeah, I think South Carolina's defense is going to yell at LSU's offense, show me what changes you've made, because everybody has run the same front. Ole Miss, as you mentioned, ran a lot of 3-man fronts, and they were able to get some pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. Now, what South Carolina does have, they have 2 outstanding players in their front seven, number 46, Brian Thomas Jr., and then number 6, Dylan Stewart, I should say, is an outstanding edge rusher. Both of them have 3 sacks. I think they have 14.5 sacks as a team. One thing they do well on defense is they get after the passer. So, it's going to be copy and paste. I mean, Pete Golding likes to bring a lot of pressure packages. He dropped and played coverage the whole game. So LSU's going to, have to be more consistent throwing the football, and Coach Kelly's talked about that. And secondly, they're going to have to run for over 100 yards. If they're going to defenses are going to put 3 and 4 people up in the box, and you're going to have the numbers to run the ball, meaning you have as many offensive linemen or more offensive linemen there in the tackle box, you've got to be able to run the football, and that's going to be the big question.
South Carolina and LSU, Saturday night in Death Valley, 6:55 is the kickoff time. Gordy, big picture before Coach Kelly joins us. Again, how important is this game? You talked about the next 3 weeks before the second bye week. Of course, we know what the back end of that looks like. Obviously, at Alabama, eventually you got to go at Oklahoma to finish up the regular season. How important is this game? Because it's your first game back after your first loss, and you're at home against an SEC opponent.
Well, look, I think it's huge. Every game is big for now. You can't afford to stub your toe and get to your goal of the playoffs without help. You don't want to have to depend on somebody. So every game is big. But I think this is a huge game for LSU's offense as a confidence builder and narrowing down, hey, this is what we want our identity to be. Let's take this on the field and execute it and get this right. South Carolina is an SEC team. They can beat you. But to play the Vandy's in the A&M the next 2 weeks, you got to get right offensively Saturday night against South Carolina.
Obviously, I do not believe Coach Kelly's going to get really deep into the game plan, rightly so, during today's press conference. But I know he's been asked on a couple of times. In fact, I've asked him on the weekly radio show. I think you've talked to him as well, pregame and postgame, about maybe moving a little quicker on offense. And again, I don't know if he'll talk about it today as far as what they've worked on. We've seen it at times, saw it some last year, saw it some this year. Your thoughts on when you see them go a little faster? Maybe not warp speed like Ole Miss, but move a little quicker.
Look, I think just a little bit of tempo, getting it 15 seconds or so into the play clock. And so that means probably less substitutions, packages, right? Less substitutions, less variations. Let's just stick with a personnel package and go. And the reason that I like that is, to me, watching Garrett Nussmeier operate when he's in rhythm. I think any quarterback wants to be in rhythm, but going back to his high school days in Texas and then watching of the years, some of the time that he's been here, I think you get folks in a rhythm where they're out there executing, they can things start clicking. a little bit better. So I'm wondering to see if you see a little bit of tempo. The flip side of that is you want to, you got to hold on to the football. You need to eat up a little time of possession and make sure your defense is on the sideline. That means, converting some first downs, keeping the ball in play. So there's a balance to that, but I'm wondering if that's going to be one of the solutions, just a little bit of tempo and moving a little bit faster.
Real quickly, before Coach Kelly joins us, I know we had to make some adjustments on the offensive line last time out due to DJ Chester's unbelievable targeting call, which we don't have enough time to get into now. But Carius Kern, again, highly touted coming into the program, and he got the start, and you were right down there on the field. Again, if there's a silver lining in a tough afternoon, the fact that he got that type of experience in that type of game on that stage, again, I got to believe he's going to do nothing but help moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who's the starting lineup. Weston Davis, as we heard last week, he took was in a concussion protocol, took a helmet, broke his nose or fractured his nose, which is unbelievable. It does happen. They do actually. You do want to hit in pregame warmups just to get the feel for that. Is Davis going to come up and then Paul Mumenga was out, and so you've played a lot of people. They've got some experience. That's a good thing. Who are going to be your starting five? And we'll see if he's going to settle on and talk about that in the press conference today, or are you going to continue to see some people rotate through?
Running backs, obviously, we're without Caden Durham, but good sign from Harlem Berry. Looked good, especially late in the game.
Look, I think Johnson's run well, but it would be nice to get Durham back out there.
All right, let's head to football ops. Here's head coach Brian Kelly.
All right, back to work. Our players returned yesterday after a few days off. As a staff, certainly we got a chance to do some recruiting and then, get ourselves ready for – really a gauntlet, 6 SEC games in 7 weeks. And I think we've all realized that each and every week, if you do not play your best against an SEC opponent, you leave yourself vulnerable. So we know that. We know what's in front of us. We're excited about what lies in front of us in a sense of, we've got outstanding teams that we're playing. They're nationally ranked. This is the part of the season now where teams, begin to show what they're made of. And for us, certainly what we're looking for is a complete game. We have not played a complete game. And when I use the word complete game, I'm referring to offense, defense, and special teams complementing themselves and each other, right? What we've had is, bits of really good performances, in particular the second half by our offense, but not a very good start or a good first half by our offense, but our defense playing well. And in particular, you just look to the Ole Miss game where we did not play efficiently enough in the offensively to start the game in the first half, got ourselves behind, and then played well in the second half and had an opportunity to win the game. That can't happen. You leave yourself open to last play of the game, last series of the game, key stop. We just need to play a complete game where our offense complements our defense and special teams. That hasn't shown itself yet. It will. We've worked hard on that. Our players have committed to that. And now we'll get an opportunity to show ourselves against a really good South Carolina team, a team that, I think many know is led by Lenore Sellers, who's an outstanding athlete, incredible arm, has the ability to change a game. We saw what he did against us last year. Certainly somebody that we have to make sure does not wreck the game for us. Again, Coach Beamer does a really good job in all phases, but, their special teams this year in particular, really show themselves. I think that's going to be a great challenge for us. They've got an outstanding returner. They've changed the game in a couple of instances on special teams. Vakari Smith, as you guys know, he's got 3 punts for touchdowns already. So that gets your attention immediately and understanding how important special teams will be in this game. Last year they blocked a punt. generally, as you know, if you block a punt in a game, you stand a great chance of winning the game. We're still fortunate enough to win that game. So we've got to be really clean in special teams. We've got to be able to accent the things that we do well as well in terms of our returners. But we've got to play really well in special teams. Defensively, they've got an elite pass rusher, probably one of the best that we'll see all year. I think, when you look at guys in this league, everybody's got the ability to rush the passer. But, again, I think in our situation, we're going to have to do some things to take care of Dylan Stewart. We're going to have to, be very cognizant of where he is. He can obviously disrupt your passing game, and we'll have to be very, very aware of where he is. It's accomplished defense. They've got good pieces back from last year. This will be a great football game in Tiger Stadium. We're excited to be back at Tiger Stadium and look to continue to have our success there. So with that, we'll open up the questions.
Coach, obviously you mentioned the importance of complementary football. How much of a part of that is also trying to capitalize more on some of the turnovers you guys are creating on defense and turning those turnovers into more points? Yeah,
I think your point is well taken, Koki. Those have turned into field goals. We need to turn those into touchdowns. I don't know that they've been empty possessions, but they haven't been impactful possessions for us offensively. And so, yeah, that's part of this, right? This is about playing more consistent football offensively for 4 quarters and then taking advantage of your opportunities, whether it be special teams, which they have, turnovers, which they have, and we're going to have to continue to do that or get to that level if we want to have the success we're talking about.
Brian, just a general health update. Could you kind of give us updates on Weston and Paul and Caden, maybe anybody else that you think might be questionable?
I think we'll list Weston is a go, Caden is a go, Nuss is a go, Paul is questionable, and Anderson is a probable. Those are our guys on the report right now.
Right. We've seen Alex Atkins sitting next to Joe Sloan in the press box. Can you kind of work through what his role is on game day, and is he influencing play calling or anything like that with Joe working together?
Yeah, they're collaborating. In particular, Alex has been assigned the run game, and I think that collaboration occurs. I can hear it on the headsets. They work well together, and that's why, I've said this before. We want to run the ball more efficiently, but I see the signs of that coming together. So we expect that to get better and better as the season goes on. But, yeah, those two are collaborating on game day.
Coach, last week you talked about wanting to see some differences in the passing game. Yeah. Can you go into a little bit more detail on that? And then secondly, would you want to see the receiver rotation maybe in series be reduced, or is that what you were talking about? Can you just elaborate a little bit more?
I think last week or 2 weeks ago, you saw less personnel moving in and out of the game at the wide receiver position. We were setting almost every play for a particular player, and in some instances that's good, but sometimes you don't get the flow of the game, right? There's two things going on. So I think we felt more comfortable what the rotation was last week in terms of our receivers being in and out of the game. And look, I think at the end of the day, it's more explosive plays. We were 1 of 7 when we threw the ball down the field. We've got to hit some of those shots that we came up short on. Those are big plays that usually led themselves for us to touchdowns. So big plays down the field, we've got to hit on those. And then I think finding a nice rhythm offensively where we're not, going over the boards every time, on a shift change. We've got to be a little bit more consistent with our flow.
This game included, but also just around the country, there were a lot of quarterbacks heading into the year that people were very, 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 very excited about, but hasn't always necessarily gone to plan for those guys. So since it's more of a nationwide trend, do you think it's more about quarterback development at the high school level? Is it about the way defenses are sort of attacking quarterbacks nowadays? Like, is there anything that sort of goes into this, or is this just a big coincidence and I'm making this all
up? You left me plenty of room there. Koki. Your shield is down. I love it. Look, I come at from this a different perspective, right? I think we we have all this build up to the season. We have all this time to read and think about who the best is, and everybody's got to get their shout out as to who the best quarterback is and and sometimes that's just, not realistic. I think what I'm more interested in is let's be a little bit more patient. Let's see how this thing plays out. We got a big stretch of games in front of us. Whatever your narrative is on our quarterback, so be it. You earn what you get in everything you do in life. But there's so much in front of us. So I just think maybe the lesson is in everything we do in life, let's be a little bit more patient. Let's wait till all the facts get out. Let's be a little bit more interested in what this process looks like than trying to get out with some kind of announcement right out of the gates. That's just my opinion.
This probably dovetails into that, but last week some unsettling news regarding Kyron Lacey's situation there. Just him having been a part of this team. What were your thoughts on that, and will you use it to address the team regarding it now?
No, look, and it does. It kind of follows up on Koki's question is that, I thought that this is a process that takes time. I think I said back in, when this occurred that let's wait until all the information comes out. Because for us to make these, universal statements early on, it doesn't serve anybody well. And so, I don't have any facts here. I'm following it just like you guys are. Let's just be patient and make sure that all the information gets out. He's loved by us, was loved before, and is loved after. So, there's not really a need to talk to our team. They follow it. They love Kyron. He was a great teammate. And he's going to be missed.
Coach, how did Nuss respond to last week, and what do you think you'll have for him this week in preparation for the game?
Yeah, I mean, he's like I said, I mean, he's feeling better and better. We didn't do a lot with him last week. We wanted to use that as a recovery week for him. Obviously he did a lot with VR. He stayed involved in everything that we're doing. Run game checks, blitz checks, things of that nature. But we just cut him down from, the throwing. And obviously we're going to go out today. We'll get a bonus day in terms of being able to practice today. So our expectations after talking to him is he feels good and he's ready to go. Good?
We're not letting you out of here that quick.
All right. I was hoping.
Go ahead, Matt.
Whenever Gabriel Elliford was injured, we talked about some of the guys that might rotate behind him. Against Ole Miss, Dylan Carpenter only played 9 snaps. Is there an expectation that might increase, or are you primarily going to run with the 3 guys?
I think it's a game-to-game situation. We trust Dylan, but there are certain situations we want to match those 3 players up in the game. And I think that the way the game was playing, we felt more comfortable with that 3-man rotation. Dylan's in that opportunity to be a guy that plays more, but I think it's going to be game to game.
Without tipping your hand too much, I mean, were there any other light bulb moments in your self-scout over the bye week that you were like, okay, yeah, this is obviously something we need to look at and figure out?
No, I think there would all, we've been so much better in the second half than the first half. From an offensive perspective, play a little bit more to our strengths. And really, like I mentioned, much more of an efficient 4 quarters of offense is what's needed. There's no major changes. There's no, hey, we're going to go to a split back veer or do something crazy here. We have to be more efficient in our passing game. We've got to hit shots down the field. And then we have to be much more efficient with the run game. So we've been working hard on it. Our guys have. I'm proud of the way they really locked in last week in a bye week. And my expectations is this offense is going to continue to get better week after week.
With a guy like Sellers this week, how do you feel like this team has improved, particularly when it comes to stopping, running quarterbacks, athletic quarterbacks?
Yeah,
like him?
I mean, that's the first question that you would expect to hear. Last year, Sellers, when he was in, hurt us running the football. So first and foremost, we have to have a plan in place to stop the quarterback run. And then you got to keep him in the pocket. He operates best when he's outside the pocket. So, discipline in our pass rush lanes, Having a solid scheme up front to take away the quarterback run, and then let him be who he is, right? I mean, he's a quarterback with great talent. He makes plays outside the pocket down the field. We've got to avoid the big chunk plays that are not scripted, and so he's a major focus of what we're doing this week.
In the off week, in the self-scout, when you look at the offensive line, what are you seeing there? Are they getting close, or, how can they get this running game going?
Well, again, getting the running game going is a relative term to, for me, in terms of efficiency. You don't want to be one-dimensional, but you want to be able, when you run the football, you can have some success like we did against Ole Miss late in the game, right? How do you carry that to, where we're going to bludgeon people up front? That's not who we are right now. But we need to have a running game that keeps you honest, that you can't, put 5 guys in the box and cover down with 7 others. So fair box runs, we've got to be better at, and we've got to be able to run the ball efficiently when you give us that look. If you want to play too high safety and give us fair numbers, we've got to be efficient at running the football, and we will be eventually.
Brian, right here in the front. I guess 2 real quick. First, for just some clarity, what if anything did Garrett do on the practice field last week, and then 2, with Carius and Weston at the right tackle spot, just is it still an open competition between those guys? How do you just sort of handle that spot along the offensive line?
Yeah, Ness was involved in the entire practice. We just didn't have him throw. He threw with a towel, which is just getting the motions and keeping the arm ready. But he did essentially all of the mental work for what we had for the days on the field. Yeah, I mean, Weston Davis obviously couldn't play in the Ole Miss game. But, look, he's got some snaps underneath him. Karras is there. If Weston needs a blow, we can also look at Karras inside at the guard position now that, Paul is banged up. So we've got some flexibility with Karras to move him into the guard position or the tackle position.
With Nuss being limited last week, what did you see from Michael Van Buren, that maybe in growth from when he first got here to now, and what do you think some things that maybe he needs to work on?
I think, he's beginning to command the offense the way I'd like a starter to command it, not a backup. I thought earlier in the year he commanded the offense like a backup. I want him to go in there and with confidence, with communication, and do that. And I thought he did a very good job when he was given the reins last week. So those are all really positive things because I think we see his skill set. He's got a live arm. He's got some elusiveness. He's got some grittiness to him that you can see in game situations. But, we really like Mike. We knew what we were getting in the portal. I think it's just his maturation now as a freshman coming into his own now that he's been in this program. So I thought it was a really good week for him.
Yeah, after, if I can go back to Ole Miss for a second, when DJ Chester was available to return in the second half, you all stayed with Kern to start the second half. Why did you all make that decision?
Because what we saw in the first half, essentially, I think if there were major issues, Brad and I would have probably made a decision there to make the change. But we felt like Karras was giving us good energy. He was protecting our edge really well in the passing game. There were a couple of mistakes inside out, which we expected that was going to happen. But by and large, we felt like let's let the young guy play, and that was kind of our sense.
The job that Kyle Parker's doing, you have a number of guys like him. Kyle Parker?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the job that he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's, look, he's a player that we had a lot of confidence in, but, it was hard to get him on the field at times because you've got a great player in Aaron Anderson. So being able to get some of those guys in rhythm, as was talked about earlier, is important because he gets now a little bit more time on the field. It's not one play in, one play out. And so I think we've been able to see his skill set. He was really big for us in fourth down. Obviously, a great catch when the ball should have went somewhere else. He catches it and is able to be strong enough to get a first down. So some key catches for us. He's a very important part of our offense.
Coach, you mentioned last week about how distractions had been an issue. Some players not locking in for 4 quarters, and you wanted to get that fixed.
How do you do that this week before South Carolina as you try to lock in to play complementary football like you mentioned?
Yeah, the distractions to me is just, having focus. One play at a time. It's 4 to 6 seconds. You can't let the next play affect the play that's coming up. I think that's sometimes competitive maturity and growing as an individual. I think we have some guys that have that can do that and lock in every single play and not let their play kind of go up and down. It's a process of guys playing and understanding when they see that they're not playing well, they got to remind themselves to lock back in, keep this to a 4 to 6 second play, and move on to the next. And that, I think, as I said, a number of our veteran guys have it. We got to get all of our guys on the same page.
You might have talked about this after the Ole Miss game, but I think people said you ran the ball twice in the first half with a running back. Perhaps is it a case of having to stick with it sometimes, even when you're not having success?
Yeah, it's circumstantial to a lot, Jacques, in terms of the runs, right? You want to be able to set up what you're doing as a play caller. And look, I think Joe does a really good job. He obviously is under the microscope. I get it. He gets it. We're looking for balance in our offense. And sometimes the circumstances are such that, a run call doesn't make sense here. But we clearly understand the need for balance. We clearly understand the need to complement our defense, and you can't do it just by throwing it.
Absolutely. The focus is on the offense. So the defense gave up some big plays, maybe more than you used to, but at the same time kept you in the game. They were on the field a lot. How did you feel the defense performed at Ole Miss, and what, if anything, needed to be worked on?
Well, we gave up 7 points in the second half. Anytime against an Ole Miss offense and Lane Kiffin's offense, if you give up 7, you'd feel like you should win the game. We just did not meet the level of our defense in that game. Yeah, listen, our defensive players to a man would tell you that was not our best game. But if that's not our best game, it was still good enough for us to win the game if we play up to our standards on offense. That's really, when you break it all down, that's the end of the story there. All right, thank you.
Coach Brian Kelly with his weekly press conference as the Tigers get ready to get back to action. Coming up this Saturday, it'll be LSU hosting the South Carolina Gamecocks. We'll have some final news and notes before we wrap it up after this.
All right. It's a beautiful day for football here at the stadium, and we're just about ready for kickoff. Score 0-0. And suddenly, I'm in the mood for a Coke Zero Sugar. Real Coke taste, zero sugar. Now that's a winning combo. Yeah, crisp, refreshing. That hits the spot. When it comes to great taste, Coke Zero Sugar's always on the scoreboard. Coke Zero Sugar. Real Coke taste, zero sugar.
There was a time when a person's word was enough. A time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
And here's Heather with the weather.
Well, it's beautiful out there, sunny and 75, almost a little chilly in the shade. Now, let's get a read on the inside of your car. It is hot. You've only been parked a short time, and it's already 99 degrees in there. Let's not leave children in the back seat while running errands. It only takes a few minutes for their body temperatures to rise, and that could be fatal.
Cars get hot fast and can be deadly. Never leave a child in a car. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
As increasingly dangerous storms shatter communities across the U.S., reliable forecasting is more important than ever. At LSU, our researchers created a highly advanced flood and storm surge tool using AI and supercomputers to analyze millions of data points so emergency managers and responders can predict vulnerable areas faster and more accurately to protect you, your loved ones, and your way of life.
That's a wrap on this week's Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For last-minute news and notes, once again, here is Chris Blair.
Looking forward to Homecoming 2025. Tiger Stadium coming up this Saturday. LSU will host South Carolina. Kickoff at 6:55. Just a reminder, coming up on Thursday, we crank back up the Brian Kelly Show live from TJ Ribs. It'll all start Thursday at 7 p.m., so come on out, enjoy dinner, and hear about the Fighting Tiger football team, the very latest as they prepare to take on the Gamecocks. And then on Saturday, we'll get it all started at 4:45. It'll be network airtime. Hunt Palmer, Marlon Favorite, Brandon Taylor will be right here in the Capital One studio, leading you up to that 6:55 kickoff. Again, Gordy Rush, Jacob Hester, myself will be on hand inside legendary Tiger Stadium for kickoff between the Gamecocks and the Tigers, coming your way at 6:55. Thanks again for joining us. Be back here next Monday, same time. I want to thank Gordy Rush. I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back next week for the Brian Kelly Press Conference.
This has been the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For the very latest on LSU Fighting Tiger football, follow the Tigers on social at LSU Football and at LSUsports.net.